Hey
Hey
everyone,
everyone.
welcome to the Tech and Real Estate live stream where we bridge the gap between real estate and technology. I'm your host, Ariel Herrera, and today we have an exciting topic, which is talking all about how to find motivated sellers via building stacked lists. And today we have Evo as well as Max from Batch Service. Welcome, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, super excited to have you guys here. For those joining, feel free to ask any questions you may have throughout the live stream when it comes to data, when it comes to building leads, and anything related to batch service as well. So with that, I'm going to share my screen quickly here. Let's cover a few topics. So I'm going to go over what's going on in my world, the main event, Q&A, and also what is coming. So it's going on in my world, in the data space, working on Coffee Closers 4.0, which is our biggest redevelopment since March. So that's taking up a lot of my time. Yesterday was one of those classic 8 a.m. to midnight coding sessions, but with that, it's a lot of logic, a lot of fun, a lot of creativity. So alongside that, for content, I'll be creating content on what Coffee Closers 4.0 is, which we have a webinar coming November 25th. For those who are aspiring data scientists, anything you do build, you have to make sure you know how to communicate what that project is and how it affects others. So I encourage you guys to join for that as well. And personally, I am excited because this weekend we are doing an early Thanksgiving. I'm going to be going to Orlando, my partner and his family, and we're going to have some turkey and ham. So very excited about that.
Awesome.
All right, and now for the main event. So we have here Evo, the co-founder of Batch Service, as well as Max, director of data solutions from Batch Service. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it off to you both, starting off with Evo, if you could provide a little bit of a background of who you are and what is Batch Service.
Absolutely. Would love to kind of have that conversation and just kind of give everybody an update. But honestly, before I kind of get started, I'd love to kind of see kind of who's attending this call, like just the level of experience, where they're from, just so I can kind of get a more of a perspective and how we what we talk about and the level of depth that we kind of go into some of the topics. So would love to kind of hear even like investment strategies that everybody's doing. And again, just years of experience, because obviously the conversation would go, a certain way depending on if we have more of a newbie crowd here or more, established investors and so forth. So, but let's get going. So, my name is Ivo. I'm one of the co-founders of Batch Service. Batch Service was founded in 2018. And really, we weren't more than we were buying a lot of data, like wholesale, selling at retail at the time. It was nothing more than that. Just the first 4 to 6 months. And we were originally. I'm personally an investor. I've been investing in real estate since 2007, right? Like when the market was crashing, 2007, 2008. I did a lot of fix and flips at the time, so I did about give or take about 200, 190, I believe, fix and flips between 2007 and 2015, 2016 timeframe. And, at that time, like the markets were just, my lead flow was drying up. I was having a harder time finding a lot of my fix and flips. And that kind of got me thinking, I started actually like acquiring properties from some wholesalers. And, I remember I think it was 2015, late 2015, like August, September timeframe, when I purchased a property from a wholesaler. And I go to the closing table, I go to the title company, I see this line item for $15,000. It says an assignment fee. I had no idea what an assignment fee was. So I called the title company and I asked, what that assignment fee is, because obviously increased my, I see what my bottom line is, and it was, lining up. But at the end of the day, I see what the actual owner of the property was getting. And I called and they explained to me this: somebody's obviously buying the property, they're reselling it to you without actually closing on it. And long story short, I ended up buying the property. I ended up making I think about $30,000 on that property. But that kind of obviously got me more interested in finding out wholesaling and other investment strategies. Really got into the wholesale route, and then 2016, I made almost a full transition. I wouldn't say a full transition, but almost a full transition into wholesaling as opposed to like fixing and flipping. And I had a lot of problems during that time to just figuring out, and the data world was just much different in that time, time frame. So I was having, I found myself working with a lot of data, just acquiring data from, 6, 7 different companies. I think we had over 20 different platforms like for us to like make the system work, and everything was integrated with, Zapier-like systems. And then if this happens, then it goes to an email, and if it picks up these keywords, it triggers another like a voicemail drop. And then the voicemail drop, if somebody answers it or like somebody calls me back, it updates my CRM, and it was all this like this chaotic like type of system. It worked, but it was very like complicated to keep up. And I started like with, especially from the lead generation side, I started doing a lot of this. I was finding myself just working with a lot of Excel data, Excel files, constantly trying to figure out, did I contact this person, just updating again, just Excel type like, files all the time, and just as I'm acquiring more and more data. And skip tracing was fairly expensive at the time. At some point it was 40, 50 cents to actually skip trace a property. Some companies were charging $1 actually to get the contact information. So it was just a different data world, even like 7, 8 years ago. And I started creating a lot of these Excel macros. And trying to figure out, okay, so I have a list from a company, and then I have another list, and a third list, and a fourth list, and then how do I know which people I've already contacted, which people I shouldn't be contacting, and then also with the skip tracing data that I was acquiring, how do I keep track of all of it, because it was just a lot, basically. And again, I found myself like 5, 6 hours a day, as opposed to working in my investing business and wholesaling. I was like manipulating Excel files, and it was very it was problematic for me. So I started on the path of just how do I create some of the macros how do I recreate some of the macros in Excel and formulas that I had done into like more of a software package. So I just ended up hiring a developer at the time. And I'm like, okay, this is what I've done with Excel. I need to basically recreate it in more of a automated way in a software. So he ended up basically mimicking a lot of the work that I had done, and that kind of came about because Batch Leads was born out of that idea. So we told a few investors, just people we were associated with at the time, actually, Brent and Pace Morby. We kind of like all came up in like the real estate around the same time, and the Batch Leads fundamentally was a list stacking platform initially, nothing more than that. It was just a list stacking platform, so you can take all of your lists and narrow it down to try to find out, which people or which individuals or properties were on multiple lists. So for instance, if you had a tax default list and an out-of-state owner list, and let's say a low or a high equity, like high equity is an example, and maybe they're also in pre-foreclosure, and you have all of these lists, and what are the common denominators or the names that appear on multiple lists? Fundamentally, that's what list stacking is. And out of marketing, out of having tens of thousands of different lists, I can narrow it down to the top 100,000, depending on my marketing budget at the time, people that are most likely to sell based on them being on multiple lists. As an example, if a homeowner's property is in pre-foreclosure, he's out of state, maybe over 60 years of age, and let's say the property is even vacant. I mean, that's an indication that that person is most likely going to be selling that property soon. So that's just how initially, we were doing list stacking in 2017, 2018, 2019. And that obviously has evolved along, the years. But fundamentally, that's what, Batch Leads was. And then obviously we ended up creating some different products, Batch Data, which is more of an enterprise-grade platform where we operationalize data at scale via API, bulk data deliveries. Same way that we in our platforms ingest a lot of this data, we've made Batch Data so that companies can solve for those same needs. And then we also have the dialer, which is just a way to operationalize the data, just cold calling or both an inbound and an outbound dialer. So fundamentally, that's what kind of batch service as a whole is about. We have 3 different products. One is more of a UI based software with Batch Leads. Batch Data is more of the enterprise grade platform, and it's really just a pay as you go. You can do skip tracing, you can pull list, you can list stack, but also you can utilize the APIs, and you can get bulk data deliveries if you want the whole country's database, as example, delivered to your AWS infrastructure. We can do that. Yeah, that's kind of short, maybe a little bit longer background on me. Max, if you want to kind of mention some of your some of the work you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in kind of software and data space for about 10 years, everywhere from marketing to customer success to sales to now, kind of data solutions, right? And so, Ivo mentioned earlier, right? Data's changed a lot over the last 8 years. And so part of kind of what we're bringing to the market, right, is kind of this more consolidated, structured view of very historically unstructured data. So we're excited to show you guys.
Yeah. So Eric, I was gonna just thinking of just having more of a visual just initially, just using the batch leads platform, and then not spend more than a couple of minutes on that. And then I think Max is going to talk about a little bit more about the batch data, and then we'll just obviously along the way talk about and feel free to jump in as well. But just some of the benefits of list stacking, why people should do it, because there's some benefits that people probably aren't thinking about, honestly, when it comes to list stacking. Because obviously it's not just the marketing costs or the cost that for acquiring the data. There's actually a lot of different other benefits for that. So I'll kind of show you guys just more in a visual way how you can list stack and really what it would do. And let me just share my screen here. And again, guys, feel free to ask any questions. I'll kind of try to stop along the way to look at the comments section and answer any questions. Can you guys confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So, fundamentally, this is our batch leads product. It's nationwide data. You can do a lot of, you can type in the location. You can see here I have Glendale, Arizona as a city. Have all the properties, all the pictures, etc. Now, here's how I can list that. If I'm starting off, and imagine I'm I work 9 to 5 somewhere else, and this is more of a part-time gig for me, and maybe it's a full-time gig at the same time. Doesn't matter, but I can come very easily here to the quick filters, and I can start kind of just checking some of these boxes. And as I check more than, let's say, one box, it'll start list stacking. So you guys can see there's about 66,000 properties in Glendale, and I haven't applied any searches here. So there's about, again, 66,000 properties in Glendale alone. And let's say some of the things that I shared earlier, let's say it's an absentee owner. I'm looking for absentee owners. Now it's narrowing it down to 21,000 properties. Now, what did I say earlier? Pre-foreclosure. So I'm going to say pre-foreclosure. Now there's 18 properties. So it went down from, so now these two lists are basically stacked. And I would probably doubt that there would be a vacant property here, but there might be. I don't know. But let's just do let's see if there is even any properties that match all three criteria. So you guys can see there's a single property that matches tax defaults, pre-foreclosures, and absentee owners. And I can obviously click on here and just see the property. So this property here is most likely a very distressed type of a seller or a distressed type of property. There's no pictures here. And I have all of the information, including the phone number for this individual or property owner. Now, if I kind of just back out for a second, and again, just unselect some of these boxes, let's say it's I can just do, let's say, absentee owner. I'll do, it's a free and clear, so it's a high equity property. And maybe it's, what else should I select here? Property is vacant. You guys can see, so I narrowed it down to 748 properties that are absentee owner, vacant property, and it's a free and clear. So I've all of a sudden, from 66,000 properties that I could potentially market to, I narrowed it down to 700 properties. And it's an extremely easy way for me to really lower my budget and just my marketing spend. But there's also a lot of different there's a lot of other like benefits. Like think about like all the subscriptions you guys are having and of how you're actually operationalizing this data. So for example, if you have a like say a dialer platform that you're using, or could be like an SMS or direct mail that you're sending out, think of all of the money that you're going to be saving, and not just like the subscription for the actual platforms, but also like the money for the individuals that are going to be running these platforms, such as hourly wages, the operational like headaches that go along with just managing let's say a bigger team that has to like dial through in this example earlier 66,000 properties, just blanketing like an area, as opposed to just identifying the most likely properties that are going to sell in a market. And we've I don't want to kind of spend too much time on this platform though, but you guys can see here the benefit of just list stacking, generally speaking. Now you can also obviously just do like, let's say, off-market properties, and I don't want to kind of really dive deeper into this one, but we've kind of made it very easy to like do this batch rank, which is like really an AI algorithm that that in a way it does list stacking, but combined with machine learning, actually with both supervised and unsupervised machine learning data, that you can really narrow it down to the most likely properties that are going to sell in this location over here. So there are 619 properties that are most likely to sell. But again, fundamentally it's a lot of like the list stacking concept compared with like machine learning. Now, I'm gonna pause here, see if you guys have any questions, or Ariel, I don't know if you want to, maybe read out some comments that you might be seeing.
Yeah, so we have a couple of folks here who are investors and have been investing for a great amount of time. We have 14 years. We also have 30 years in the wholesale business as well. One question I wanted to ask Ivo is, you just showed within about 5 seconds how to grab 3 different lists and stack them and see that one individual that would check off all those boxes.
Yeah.
If someone was doing that manually, is that even possible? And how much longer than 5 seconds would that take them?
I mean, everything's possible. It's just what's the cost you're paying for that. As I mentioned, some of the mistakes that I've made as an investor myself is not mistakes. I mean, the technology was at a different point when I was getting started, but it was very hard. There weren't any platforms that allowed you to do any of this. So think of all of the competitors. If your competitors are not doing any type of list stacking and they're marketing to thousands and thousands of individuals, how much more juice can you squeeze out of just marketing to, let's say, the top 100, top 1,000, depending on your marketing budget in your team, and really just hitting them multiple times. As an example, like you can have like SMS campaigns, direct mails, like you can maybe even upload that same list into like a Facebook marketing campaign and just have an additional layer of just marketing. So because as people are seeing your brand and you're also text messaging them, and maybe they received a call from you, they've probably seen a couple of direct mail pieces along the way, and that information starts to compound, and people all of a sudden now associate like your brand, whatever your brand is, with as like a reputable brand. And it might not be the first message or the first phone call, but when you start compounding a lot of these just different marketing motions, it will pay off. And that's what I think separates a lot of the most successful investors in the country today from the rest. I'm actually working with a couple of, we provide data to a lot of individuals. One guy that I was just actually talking to last week, they're a big operation. They do 700 deals annually. And what they do is they've taken this whole list stacking concept on steroids. So they're basically using our data, our API, to plug their to enhance their CRM. So they're in a nutshell, they're doing a reverse list stacking concept. So all of the leads that they have in their CRM, now they're reverse list stacking and seeing, okay, like we have, I think they had 110,000 leads in their CRM. And again, it's a huge operation. They have 70 employees. Nationwide investing 700 deals annually, and out of those 110,000 leads, he's like, it's fundamentally not, 90% of those are probably just outdated data and junk data. So they've been using our API to enhance all of their data, so clean up any properties that might have been sold, and so forth, or properties that have been listed on the market because they're most likely not going to do an off-market transaction. if those properties are on the market already. And again, just eliminating properties that have been, sold in the past, whatever, let's say a year or 2 years, and really reverse list stacking. So they're able to identify, okay, out of the properties that we have, which ones are the most likely to sell based on having multiple distress factors. The same thing that I just mentioned, show you guys, but instead of just going top down, you're going bottoms up basically approach. And they've seen this tremendous success in just doing a lot of those types of implementations. But it kind of goes to show it's now, as opposed to targeting in their sales teams, having to go through 110,000 leads, they have, let's say, 1,000 leads they have to go through, which is a manageable list of leads they go through, and they're able to deprioritize certain leads in their CRM and prioritize certain leads that are most likely to sell based on the whole list stacking concept.
Yeah, prioritization is huge. And I think you mentioned a really key point. The people who do this well is the marketing to the top priority motivated sellers, because I think I heard recently it takes 6 touch points to get someone to convert. So it's not that first text message or that first phone call. It could take a little bit of time, maybe a Facebook ad as well.
Yeah, it's actually some of the new things. It was just because maybe 6 was to be honest, I think 6 is too low nowadays, because they're just bombarded with just information, and just the whole Amazon effect of just the information overload across the board. In the software companies that I'm sure it's really upwards of 20 people. Salesforce publishes some reports where you have to contact, and Max, you may or may not know this more in detail, but it's really over 20 times you got to reach somebody for them to really become a customer. So it just varies on the industry by industry, and also varies on the distress factors, and that's you can really narrow down the distress, the leads, and not only again save on your marketing, but think about all of the other things you're saving, employees' time and other subscriptions that you're using, and then managing these employees and figuring out KPIs across the board. Imagine having if you're doing it for 100,000 leads as opposed to 100 leads, it's a much different conversation.
Completely agree. Yeah, and before we move on to the data aspect, we do have a great question here. Is probate or pre-probate data available?
So we have the pre-probate, the inherited list. It's inheritance list. Basically, it's an indication that the property is going to go into a probate. Currently, we do not have probate in the platform.
All right, thank you. And Max, handing it over back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ivo's talked a lot about batch leads, right? And I think if you have a need for software around the data, and it's not, these substantial data needs, it's a great platform. It's a subscription, like Ivo mentioned. We also have, which I'll show here, is what we call batch data, right? All that data that's supporting batch leads all lives within its own platform here on our side that's available to you. Platform's free to sign up, pay as you use data. You can do a litany of different things, right? You can do things like list stacking, like we're talking about, either through this web interface. You can do all the same things via an API as well. And so I'll kind of go through each of those different processes.
And next, I'll just point out something really quick. So batch leads, again, like you mentioned, is more of a UI, there's more of a user-friendly version of just a way to visualize data and just manage your data. But we only expose about honestly, I'm probably in the ballpark, but about 70 or so data points in batch leads from the our property model data. And whereas in the batch data we expose everything. There's always over 700 different data points that you can filter by and narrow it down by, and obviously export a lot of the data as well. So it'd be very overwhelming for a lot of let's say newbies. I mean, obviously other investors to have all this data in batch leads. So we've kind of pared it down in batch leads and then made it fully available in batch data, because all this data can be used again, like I mentioned, bulk data or API, or just like Max is going to show you now. You can just download Excel files on as needed basis.
Yep. Thanks, Ivo. So there's 3 main sections to this list builder portion. You'll create the stack list. Where are you looking for data? What type of data are you looking for? Or what filters are you going to use? And when you get those properties back and you download them, what information do you need to know about? And so let's use, Ivo's test case. Hey, maybe I'm a part-time investor just getting started. I can make, 100, 200 calls a week, but I can't do this crazy volume. Maybe I live in Miami and I'm looking for properties around, Miami-Dade County, for example. So I'd start by putting in the location. You can see you can enter state, zip codes, counties as well, and you can bulk upload zip codes as well. And largely the list stacking, at least in its structured form, is going to live within the same quick list structure that it did in batch leads, right? So we talk about, how do I target distressed properties? Hey, maybe someone's in foreclosure, or pre-foreclosure, I should say. You'll notice this O selection. That's going to be for or. As we talk about list stacking, you're going to want to change that operator to A, meaning anything else I add is going to be and on top of whatever previous filter I built. And then if we go to recently sold, we'll say, hey, instead of including recently sold properties, we actually want to exclude them. All right, so now I have, 3,300 or so properties, but that's still too many for me, right? Let's make sure that these owners are out of state absentee owners as well. And now I have the magic number. Now I have 100 people that are really good targets for me that I know are distressed in the way that I can go, acquire their property, right? In terms of output fields, by default, you'll have access to the physical address and the APN. You'll see some additional details available within this basic property data set, largely lat long, owner name, and their mailing address. If all you need is what is a property address that I want to buy, this is where to get that information. I'd say most of our customers are starting with this core property data set though, being tax assessor. And so that's really everything from the assessor record, year built, bed bath, assessed value, all things like that. Going to be
a lot of detail.
Yeah, so it's 223 fields. You can, like I did, select all of them, or you could say, you know what, maybe I don't need the improvement market value. You wouldn't get that including your export file. And so once you make this first decision, right, I either want a little bit or a lot of information about that base property, you can say, what other information do I need to know about that property or that owner, right? Maybe I want insight to their mortgage. Maybe I want some indication about their pre-foreclosure statuses, right? Other auctions, how is it registered to the county from a book and document perspective? What's the due date? All that kind of stuff. I could say, hey, I want to understand, maybe not in this case, but hey, is the property listed? Who's the agent? Things like that. And then, of course, how do I contact that homeowner? Contact enrichment. You'll see you get flags both at the owner level, whether someone's on the litigator list, at the phone number level, whether an individual phone number is on the national do not call list, up to 10 phone numbers per individual, up to 3 email addresses per owner for each property as well. Once I've built this list and I say, all right, these are all the things I want to know about, everything's all set here, I'll just go and download the order. It can either be downloaded directly to a browser as a CSV file, or like Eva mentioned, you can set up cloud storage, AWS, to have data dumped directly there. You'll see you can select a specific order size, either all or a small portion of the list you build to be downloaded. You go ahead and kind of accept that confirmation, submit the order, and then you'll have this list that's going to download here. If I click this, it'll give me a really good overview of what is this list I downloaded, right? Here are the filters I used, and when everything gets back, some of this information will be plugged in around the cost around certain things.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that walkthrough. And the simplicity of it is what's really amazing, and I think such a great innovation as well. So a little bit of a backstory. When I first came about Batch was a couple of years ago. I was trying to do a solution, something with spreadsheets, and I needed real estate data. And all these real estate companies had like plans where I had to purchase, like do monthly subscriptions for, thousands of dollars in order just to get like a small data set. But then I saw on Zapier that Batch had a connection. And then I started to dive into that you guys also have these services where if you just need to grab a list or if you need to connect to the API to get information, you can do that on an ad hoc basis, which I think is really great value.
Absolutely. And so Evo talked too about kind of that reverse list stacking. That's enabled either through the API or this UI as well. You can either do a single property lookup, wouldn't necessarily be applicable in this case, but you can actually upload a file as well and get any of those different data sets that we just talked about simply appended to your upload file. And so if you want to do it kind of slow scale manually, this is certainly a path to it. But like I mentioned, or as I teased, I should say, all of what I just showed, you can build yourself using our API. You have basically untethered access to our API. And I'll show you what that setup looks like, how easy it is. You'll see here, I'm on this server-side token. Really, any production tokens can be generated right here. It's going to ask me to name my token. Then you'll see 3 different categories of different endpoints available in the API. Address and phone are largely going to be either autocomplete or verification focused, right? I have a phone number. Is it on the DNC list? Is the owner on the litigator list? Where most of you are going to be focusing through use of our APIs here in this property section. All those data sets in that use case we're talking about, really property search and lookup are going to be the endpoints you're going to want to use. You'll see there are both synchronous and asynchronous versions. So if you're doing kind of one-off searches where you don't expect a ton of data to get processed, you can use the synchronous ones. But as you kind of bulk up and things are kind of happening at the same time, definitely these synchronous ones I would recommend. But what you'll notice is if I go into property search, for instance, I'm able to assign the specific data sets that I want returned every time I make a call using that specific token, right? So maybe I'm looking for, again, that same kind of pre-foreclosure mortgage situation I had before. Now I'll go ahead and create this token. I won't hit go because it'll expose it. But I'll basically go ahead and have a long string. I'll put the word bearer in front of it because I authorize in the API. And I'm off and running to go ahead and call any of those endpoints. What I'll move to quickly is this is our API documentation. All those endpoints I talked about are fully documented here in terms of what those request kind of structures look like. What are the possible returns? How should I expect data to look? And you'll see in the top right a number of different examples, right? How are other customers using our API to look for, mailing address vacant, or when there's an auction date, or recent listings, or really, whatever from these 24 different use cases. All of that I just did in the UI, you can build yourself.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love the examples aspect. So instead of having to dig a lot through a documentation, I could just quickly see what are other people searching and build that query effectively. Nice. So we do have a question. Thanks, David. So are we able to get information on the mortgage, particularly the bank of that mortgage?
There's not necessarily going to be a way to query for that information, but we would have the lender name as part of one of those outputs.
Yeah, I think this is more of a pro serve request, but you wouldn't be able to expose be searched by the like as an example, Wells Fargo. That Wells Fargo is the lender. You can obviously get the lender information once you get the data. You can export it and you'll be able to search by it. But we can support some of these use cases through just our pro serve and really just customize the data you need. And we work with a lot of lenders and underwriting companies and just banks as well that need a lot of this type of data. So we kind of curate custom-made data solutions for a lot of these companies depending on their needs.
Excellent. Yeah, feel free to continue asking any questions in the chat. It could even be basic questions of what types of leads people usually go for. How to integrate this into, actually, let's touch that. Max, how would someone integrate, say, like the batch API if they're using another CRM like Go High Level? Is that possible?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a pre-built integration necessarily, right? You'd have to write that code for fetching and retrieving whatever information it is. But yeah, something as sophisticated as Salesforce or as foundational as something else on kind of the other end of the spectrum. As long as it's kind of a open API, it'll be no problem.
Yeah, I will mention that we actually, the thing that I talked about earlier, so we have a fully the whole reverse appending of actually, sorry, I'm going to state it a different way. So we have an integration with Podio specifically in regards to cleaning up people's CRM data. but we are working on some just native integrations with Go High Level, and we're also currently working. So the use case that you kind of mentioned, Max, like we are in the process of working with a big Salesforce operation. I mean, this is talk about millions of addresses in their data to basically update their Salesforce records in real time, or actually, sorry, once a day is what we're building, but it's really just hooking our API to the Salesforce infrastructure. The same way it can be done on Go High Level, but we are working on some native integrations with Go High Level. And we have some of the Podio ones already built for just cleaning up people's CRM data inside of their Podio.
That's fantastic. Yeah, just making it really easy. And I get this question a lot is how do I know I can trust the data? So is the data refreshed on a 90-day basis, daily? Like, can you give us some context of the data and how would someone know how accurate it is?
Yeah, great question. That's it's a really good question. So, I'll be honest, like in the very beginning of my journey, I was obsessed with just data quality, and the reason why I was getting data from so many different places is because I was finding a lot of just holes in the data. I did get data from, forgetting some of the companies' names to be honest back in the day, but and then half of them would be missing, things like almost like simple things as zip codes and bedrooms, bathrooms, missing square footages. So then I would have to go to a different vendor, try to see if they have some of this information, and then try to merge my two files so I have like a file that is the source of truth for me. So fundamentally, what ended up happening is, and this is why I believe we were successful in the early days of our investing career, in my real estate investing career, because we were marketing to the most likely individuals to sell, and we had a very kind of comprehensive data because I just never relied on a single vendor's data. And we carry this whole concept into our data modeling as we started, ingesting more and more data. So currently, we have data going back, hundreds of years, like literally hundreds of years, transaction history and ownership history for a lot of these data points. And we were able to acquire, my viewpoint was that, the more data we have, the more we'll be able to clean it up and systemize it and be able to create a product, that people trust and want. And, we went it's the multi-vendor approach. So for instance, we have not only are we licensing a lot of data just, on a monthly, daily basis, we're licensing a lot of data from various companies, but we also have actually integrations with a lot of different local assessor, counties as well, not nationwide, but we have a good number of direct integrations with a lot of these assessor data points. So now what separates us from the competitors, and also I can share some different data points. Actually, I don't have it actually pulled up in front of me. And maybe I just, as I finish talking, I'll try to pull it up. I can share some information on this. But things like bedroom counts, bathroom counts, AVM counts, we have almost a 20%, if not more than 20% higher fill rate and data quality than any one of the competitors in the industry. We're talking about, Black Knight, CoreLogic, First American's data, Atom data. Like we have better data quality because of our multi-source vendor approach. And we use our data layer is built on top of Databricks. And that allows us to, granularly inspect data at scale and helps us operationalize this data. Now, as far as the phone number data, it's the same concept. We use a multi-vendor approach in addition to us using our first-party data. So, for instance, we use our dialer data to dialer, like the phone calls that we're making on the dialer. We denormalize that data, but we're able to find out, which phone numbers are connecting, how long the connections are for. So, for instance, is it potentially a less than 30-second connection, which might indicate the voicemail, or is it a conversational connection where it's in the minutes, long conversation. So now we're able to feed that data back into our Databricks environment and our data lakehouse and be able to determine what numbers do we know for a fact are connecting, which numbers are not connecting because we're getting maybe a SIP 404 response, which is like just a bad number indication. And maybe like 3 or 4, imagine if 3 or 4 or 5 users using the dialer are getting a 404, we know this number is not working. It's not a number that will connect. You probably, if you call it from your cell phone, you probably get, you've reached a non-working Verizon number as example. And those are the data, the numbers that we can completely eliminate from, our pipeline to the point, and this happens in real time. So, let's say, Ariel, you make a phone call on the dialer, that number it gets a SIP 404 response. We feed that data into our Databricks environment. So the next time, let's say Max requests the phone number for this property, we automatically, eliminate that phone number, and potentially there might be multiple numbers, obviously, but that number gets eliminated to the point where Max is not going to get it because we know it's a bad number. And it's the same kind of like feedback mechanisms that we have for a lot of the property data as well as the phone number data. But to answer your question, you asked how often the data gets updated. The data gets updated as quickly as anybody will have it available. So MLS data gets updated daily. MLS data is very volatile, so it gets updated on a daily basis. We get updates from the counties as quickly as the counties basically publish the data. And some counties are in different schedules. Some counties publish it every 2 weeks. Some counties publish every 4 weeks. But we basically get it as soon as they publish it. And the multi-vendor approach basically allows us to say, okay, so let's say there's a company A and a company B. Company A has updates data in a specific county, by let's say a week or 2 weeks quicker than company B. We use company A's data in this example. But in another county, let's say on the East Coast versus the West Coast as an example, company B has a lower latency on certain data fields, and we use company B data, and then we merge all of it together to the point where we create a data that's better than any one of the competitors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely fantastic. So it makes sense because you're looking at multiple data sources, why the accuracy is high. And the one thing I want to focus on as well is the skip tracing. I know you mentioned that pretty quickly, but that's really revolutionary, right? To in real time detect, is this a phone number that is, it's a legitimate one that's being picked up. There's no like Verizon wireless disconnection, and providing that feedback right away to the next users, maybe not like in a text format, but you're no longer maybe putting that phone number on the top of the list. And I think that can help a lot of both experience, but also newbies in this space to be able to focus on the right leads as well as the right contact information for those leads.
Absolutely, yeah. And let me just see why I can't share my screen here. Give me a second. I want to kind of just show you some of the things that I talked about earlier. And I wasn't prepared actually to, share some of these things, but you guys can see kind of, this is like I mentioned, the bedroom bathroom counts, and this kind of goes across the board though. We have data for, like I mentioned, upwards of 400 different fields.
Can you make it a little bit bigger, or maybe go into slideshow view slide? Yeah, that's perfect.
Like 400 different fields where we compare every single vendor's data points to our data point. And this is just an example of just, fields that people will understand. Something as bedroom, bathroom, AVMs as well. But we have 103 million properties with bedroom counts, whereas you can see what some of the competitors have, in the 70 and 80 million range. That's a 20% uplift. So imagine if you're doing a, property comparables. If you don't have the bedroom and bathroom counts, it'd be very difficult for you to do property comparables, the right way. And just the effect gets compounded, obviously, depending on your use case.
Everything, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking right now just calculating things like cash flow. So, like you said, the comparables for rent, you're going to have inaccurate comparables potentially as well. Like I'll look at things like for other 3 bedrooms in the same zip code, what is their cash flow in comparison to this one? If I don't have that context of the bedrooms, now I'm rolling that up to look at just everything in the zip code, and the data is just less accurate. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to automate this from a platform's perspective, or you're looking at, you've automated your API to be able to do this at scale, or have a lot of background processes. Imagine if you have like I have a property, give me the top, let's say 5 comparables. Well, you might be missing on like the most important comparables because just the way the system was designed, you're not factoring in properties that are missing certain information, because it can't give you the values you need unless you're actually manually researching a lot of these properties. So it's very hard to, data quality is the big one, is the biggest, is our biggest focus, and it always has been, honestly.
Excellent. And I have another question for you guys. So since you worked with both enterprise as well as individuals, for those in the individual side that are maybe newbies and they're getting started at wholesaling or investing, they're building their lists, what are some like common mistakes that you see, or even if you were to do it like in the best way possible, how would you do that?
Can you repeat like the beginning part of your question?
So yeah, I'll rephrase it. So say if I'm a newbie and
Yeah.
I want to get into wholesaling, I want to start contacting 100 to 200 people a week because I have a part-time job, so I can't go past that. What are some common mistakes that you'll see, like folks who are in that position when they get started in looking at leads and building leads?
Yeah. So I will say that I no longer, as of like 3 or 4 years ago, like, do investing, as an active, like, day-to-day role. So, I invest in real estate more passively now than I have been in the past. However, I will tell you, kind of goes. It's a very simple principle. Oftentimes, what I see people is they overthink. They overthink like process. They overthink it's just analysis paralysis of just, hey, I have to have all of my ducks in order for me to contact the person. I have to know everything that I about, call it subject to or investment strategies, because what happens if a homeowner asks me a question that I can't answer. So now it kind of goes back into, I just need to study more, and I need to study more, and I need to basically do more, like, just analysis on how do I actually get started. And I see this like kind of just problem with people just getting started in the industry, just really overthinking it. And I have actually some personal friends that have been through this rodeo before, and my advice to them is just like, enough, just do it, and you'll learn along the way very, very quickly. Like like you can read a lot of things, you can study a lot of stuff and content from a lot of great coaches. Area you put out a lot of great content as well. But at the end of the day, like, people have to just do it, and that's going to be like the best like teacher. Just because you're going to mess up on a deal, that's completely fine. You're maybe not going to get it, but you learn your lesson the second deal. And the platforms are there, the tools are there, more so than they ever have been. It's easier to get started in this industry than it ever has been in the past. You can like automate, as I mentioned, like I was using, like, I'm not kidding you, we counted over 20 different tools. I think it was 21 or 22 different like tools that we were using to run our company, and it was chaotic. And it was like, currently you can do it with 2 or 3 like different like platforms. Just, you have a lead gen platform, you have a CRM, and maybe you have some kind of an outbound motion platform. Maybe you connected it to as Facebook, like I mentioned, like a custom audience, which I see more and more people kind of starting to do now. But you can do it with the handful of like platforms to really have a successful business. Because when I was getting started, everybody, I mean, like I mentioned, I saw some people who have been investing for 15 years. So you guys remember like a lot of the stuff that how platforms used to work in the past. And as I mentioned, skip tracing was $1 basically when I got started. Now it's free. Like, we offer it for free. And our, like, you sign up for, like, let's say our batch leads platform, skip tracing is free. It's included. So it's easier now than it ever has been. And a lot of people are probably going to say like, well, there's more competition. Well, competition has always been there, in my opinion. There was a lot of competition in 2016, 2017 as well. There always is competition, but you got to figure out how to outsmart the competition, how to do more, better, with some of the principles that we talked about. The list stacking and just being smarter of how you approach problems. And honestly, just practice is the best coach you're gonna have just in this, in anything. Honestly, like, quite honestly, in 2016, I had no idea what an API is. I swear to you, like, I had to look up what an API is. Like, I had no idea. Like, so. Like, I remember Googling it at the time, and it just, it happened that, created like a software company out of it. But that's, it's, you gotta jump like, head first, into situations and figure it out as you go along. Because, there's no magical list, no magical marketing strategy. There's no magical thing that you gotta like learn, and you can hear a lot of things from let's say different coaches, different strategies, but at the end of the day, they may or may not work for you, and you got to figure out find your lane, and the best way to do that is really through practice.
Yeah, great pieces of advice. Just getting started, figuring out what's working, what's not, and then from there trying to scale, for sure.
Yeah, and the same goes for our business. Like Max knows, like we go through like there's should we do this strategy or that strategy? Like what does our like marketing funnel look like, and is this a landing page going to convert better than the other one? At the end of the day, it's my opinion is as good as your opinion probably, and let's just give it a try. We'll do an A/B split test, and we'll see which one outperforms the other.
Yeah. Could you actually give a little more context on some of the Facebook marketing that you've been seeing?
Yeah, so I think some of the more successful investors that I've talked to, that are people that are doing probably upwards of. I mean, I've talked to honestly a handful. I wouldn't say just 4 or 5 people that kind of come to mind that are using a lot of like the our batch rank methodology, just like the machine learning that we have deployed, as well as you can do it as so in a list stacking way, where you're looking if you're marketing. It's just it's a multi-marketing like type of like channel strategy. So again, let's say 100 to 1,000 leads that are list stacked. You can send direct mail, put it in a direct mail sequence where they're getting 4, 5, 6 emails or so direct mail pieces, and you can text them, you can call them. You can also upload that same list, because you have emails for a lot of those individuals, into a Facebook custom audience campaign and create some Facebook ads to just get your brand out there. I mean, obviously you can market from a perspective of, here's just more of a branding. Hey, like, XYZ, ABC, investors, buys houses in the area. Or you can say, hey, are you looking to sell your house for cash? We pay whatever top dollar, whatever those types of ads look like for you. But it's really just, people are just I'm not sure what the word is that I'm looking for here, but it's very hard to reach people just from a single marketing channel. And it's not that it's not possible. It's obviously you can get deals just by calling somebody or texting them, but this doesn't scale very well. And some of the more sophisticated operations that I've seen is they have like the whole multi-marketing channels, like very like well deployed. They're also marketing on Google and Facebook through this custom audience, which you can kind of saves you a lot of potential like money, because you're only targeting ads or delivering ads to a certain cohort of like people that are again most likely potentially to sell their property. And when you're calling them and texting them and direct mailing them and everything else that you might be doing on top of that, it's just going to snowball into a bigger brand, more brand awareness, and it's going to eventually lead to more deals.
Exactly. Having the different multifaceted of channels that you're reaching out to folks. Also having your own like web page, I think I've seen work as well.
Yeah.
That leads like coming directly to you.
Yep. Yeah. And we actually have been like thinking about like, it might be like a Q1 initiative for us as a company to just automate the Facebook marketing creation through batch data. So if anybody has any, as a need for it. I mean, I know some of the more sophisticated investors want it. Would love to kind of see if we're trying to analyze or gauge the appetite.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super exciting. Folks, I know we have a couple of minutes left, so feel free to ask any other questions you may have. And I wanted to ask Max, what is something you're looking forward to for either end of year or 2025 when it comes to initiatives with the data?
I think I am looking forward to some new API packages we're going to be rolling out as little teas come the top of the year. I think that's going to make it really easy for you guys to come to us, procure data easily, get exactly what you need. It's not going to break the bank.
Awesome. I'm excited. Yeah. And for those who are watching or watch later the replay, if there are specific parts of the API or batch leads that you want a further walkthrough or to understand more, like how do I actually use the skip tracing API or be able to get pre-foreclosure data, let me know so I can help develop some videos around that as well.
Yeah, and I just saw a comment here for 123 Sold Cash. I don't know the guy's name, but if investor fuse, I have a good relationship with Trevor. You can message him too. Just asking for an integration with us, and I just want to obviously see how many people want that, and we'll pursue an integration with the investor fuse if necessary. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else that you guys wanted to leave the audience with before I show the last slide?
I don't think so, Ariel. I think you obviously have all the links to our documentation, but we'll make sure we get kind of some of those help articles, API docs, registration links out to the audience.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here. And yep, just as a recap, I'll have the links below here. If you want to get started, you can do so with batch data. I'll be having more videos and tutorials in the future of how to integrate some of the APIs and utilize it using Python. As well, you can follow Batch directly on Instagram as well as YouTube. And next week, we will be having a deal deep dive with Mark. We had a previous video similar to it of actually like looking up a property and deciding like, would we go forward with it or not? So definitely join us for that event.